Good afternoon, everybody. When Stefan said that Seth was next, I saw half the room leave, so I didn't know how to take that. I promise this will be a very interesting panel. I only accept moderating when I know the panelists are all super smart and interesting and they get to do all of the heavy lifting. I just ask a few questions. But thank you in advance for hanging out with us and helping us to organically explore metaverse, what's going on today as it relates to gambling and things to come. But before we begin, I want to allow the panelists to give a brief background so you understand why they are all uniquely qualified to speak about metaverse. So, Mark.
Sure. Cheers. Good afternoon, everyone. So, I'm Mark. I'm coming from the iGaming space. I've been the past 3 years following the blockchain and Web3 side, where nowadays I'm working with my own service called ProdMark 365, where I focus mainly in leveraging the power of product marketing and educating Web2 companies getting into Web3.
Hi. Hi, everybody. I'm Pallavi Deshmukh. I'm from NetGaming. I started my career about 18 years ago with Party Gaming, which is now N10. I started with affiliates, then moved to B2B, then left N10 after 13 years, started my new journey with NetEnt. And after NetEnt, I decided to join a startup, NetGaming. And we develop content for online casinos, and we distribute them. As far as the Web3 and blockchain space goes, we've started looking into it quite actively. We've started developing games that are geared towards the player type that is very popular on Web3 and blockchain. So that's where we are at the moment with NetGaming. Thank you.
I still don't believe you started 18 years ago. Fact check that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Narcis. I work with Xcoins. My career has been a very positive string of coincidences. I first started with Evolution Gaming back in 2016. I built the operation in Romania, because that's when they entered the market. Then I moved to Malta, and I grew a lot of the operations here, primarily Nordic, in Brazilian. I got into crypto because I was a gold believer, and it made sense that we're going to move from that to crypto. And about a year ago, I got into NFTs purely because of the art, and the tech made sense. And I didn't know that when I joined was exactly when it was going to take off. So here I am. Right now, we're doing crypto payments for regulated markets in casinos.
So there's a lot of focus on the future, what's coming, what this looks like, what Web3 could be. But let's start with the softball. What's the most interesting thing in iGaming related to Web3? What's the most interesting project or initiative that you're aware of?
I always encourage people to look at the broader picture and see projects that stand out. I believe that the future is not in just providing one type of game or several types of games. It's like providing an experience. And a really good project that I encourage everybody to look at is Zedrun. They're like digital horse races, but it doesn't have just the betting element. You bet on this horse, whatever. Buy horses, sell horses, breed them. You have different qualities and breeds. You can own like property where you grow them, rent that property, etc., etc. So it's way beyond just I'm gonna bet on this horse, hope it wins. It's more like I can do a lot of things in this application that can make money in all sorts of ways.
Right. I think for us, especially coming from a supplier background, we can explore a lot more with the NFTs and the NFT space in general. Like I was saying, we've started doing that. We launched our very first Mutant Ape Yacht Club themed NFT slot earlier this year. And we are actually releasing another slot, which is going to be, well, it's called Casino Punks. It goes live tomorrow. And that is also, of course, it's a derivative of CryptoPunks, which is a very, very popular collectible as far as NFTs goes. So I think NFTs are definitely something that's super interesting, especially in the iGaming space. And then the other thing, I mean, again, this is something that we are looking into as well, is play-to-earn slots. So, there are tons of play-to-earn games in the crypto space, but we are looking at a play-to-earn slot to see how, we can make it more interesting rather than just a traditional slot, which I don't think the players would be interested in because the player type is very, very different. So I think those two things are quite interesting, in my opinion.
Very good. No, eventually, from my end, I would say the most attractive thing when it came to the Web3 side is that I saw that there's a lot of opportunities that we can connect from one side to another. Like when it comes to the technical side and the creativity side, I see that there's various synergies that we didn't have in the past.
Yeah.
And even when it comes to the product and marketing side of a new launch or a project itself, there's various opportunities when we build utilities, gamification around our games. Like you're mentioning yourself, there's various slot games being launched nearly every week.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel that they're very saturated, and it's time to start getting into new elements for the customer and even improving the user journey. You mentioned as well like NFTs, which yes, they are great to have, and there's various opportunities behind them. But when creating an NFT, I consider them more, I would say, as a digital asset.
Yeah.
Because we can utilize them, and not just on the technologies that we're working on, known as Web3, but we can collaborate across the metaverse. We can collaborate even on Web2 engines, and the same on the Web3 side.
That's great. I don't know about you all, but I was unaware of NFT-themed slots. I run a land-based casino. I am definitely going to look into the old-school version of that and play-to-earn slot machines. It makes perfect sense. So you're definitely ahead of it. So metaverse, Web3, it's a big umbrella. The definition's hard. I think the last panel touched on that. But it seems like the underlying technology that we're referring to is blockchain. Are there concerns around blockchain? Are there any issues with blockchain? Are there alternatives to blockchain?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely concerns, especially in the iGaming regulated space. I mean, in general, iGaming is always kind of, seen in a negative light, especially when it comes to regulations and, where we can promote and what we can promote and how we can promote. So there are tons and tons of restrictions. Market is getting regulated all the time, especially Europe. Pretty much every country is regulated. So the basic nature of blockchain, which is distributed, it's decentralized. There is no one authority kind of, there is no central body kind of responsible for what's going on the chain. The very fact that could become an issue for the regulator. Like, who do they hold accountable for if something goes wrong? That's one of the aspects that the regulator always wants to know. Like, okay, where do we go? Okay, we can walk into your server room and we can actually block the servers. Like, those are the kind of things that's the kind of control that they are looking for. And the core of blockchain is exactly the opposite. So that's going to be quite a massive challenge to kind of, convince the regulators. Like, so I'm hoping that, we can start gradually. We can, we can start and see how the technology matures, because at the moment, it is kind of defined, but then it is also vague. It's not really, not all rules are set. So if that matures and if that aspect is taken care of, that's going to be a huge help for iGaming especially.
Something that I think eventually is that we are not yet in a mass adoption due to the regulations. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of companies and regulated markets that are taking a step back, not just running into it. But then at the same time, I see there's various opportunities for companies to start looking into. At the end of the day, everything is going to be regulated. Just yesterday, Jerome Powell and all the Europeans were discussing onto how to regulate and from which perspective they are looking into regulations, especially when it comes to tokenization or digital assets itself. In fact, they are foreseeing that within the next 5 to 10 years, anything can be tokenized from a digital side. So from an iGaming perspective, I see this is as a positive because we can utilize and we can outsource certain utilities within the ecosystem.
Yeah, no, agree. And I just thought about the other kind of, limitation as well. So the fact that, the technology is still quite slow. Like, when it comes to iGaming, the whole idea is, how quick the spin is and so on. Like, you don't want to bore the player. Like, it has to be engaging, it has to be exciting. And the fact that, it is quite slow compared to what we are used to as an industry, that's also quite a big challenge. But again, like you mentioned, it will improve. I mean, this is at a very nascent stage. So, it will go, it will improve.
It sounds like potential regulatory roadblocks, we can overcome them over time. Technology, we know, will always get better. But let's talk about the customer for a moment. In terms of crypto, some customers run away from crypto. What are the challenges onboarding a crypto customer? Does the customer want to be able to wager with his or her cryptocurrency?
It's a very global issue, so to speak, because if you look at a market like Europe, for example, compared to others, it's not exactly crypto friendly. Like people in Europe, they're not used to crypto yet. So it becomes a matter of educating them. Your credit card is not working or something like that, where it takes 2 days for the transaction to be processed. Why don't you try Bitcoin, or why don't you try using some other cryptocurrency? And you educate them into using this as a solution. It's also the matter of regulation versus kind of AML enforcement, because let's say you have markets, European markets again, which are regulated, and that somebody is enforcing the rules. While if you go into gray areas or something like that, sure, you can have the regulation, but it's not always enforced. So there are different plans for different areas. If you go like Asia, maybe Gulf, maybe Africa, those people are crypto friendly, it's easy to onboard. But if you go into something like Europe, you need to educate people and slowly bring them in and explain why it's better. And it speeds things up. At the end of the day, crypto just speeds the experience. Deposit, it's done, let's go. Versus wait 2 days or all these sorts of manners.
True. Yeah, and I think on the iGaming side, as in again, as a supplier, I mean, to begin with, certain things are pretty straightforward. You start supporting as many cryptocurrencies as possible. You start kind of developing content that is geared towards the player type on crypto casinos. And also when it comes to integration, I think the base layer of integration, or like, the distribution channel, that I feel is still kind of, on the traditional technology. So that the core hasn't really changed yet, at least at this stage, it hasn't. The fact that, there are casinos, I mean, they're called crypto casinos, is because of the kind of games they are supporting, because of part of the technology that they have implemented, but it's not full blockchain yet, right? Like we are far from it. Like, we're getting there, but it's not there yet. So I think to begin with, that shouldn't really be a huge challenge, like, integrating or kind of onboarding crypto casinos. It's kind of the phase 2 that's going to be the real challenge, I feel.
For sure. So in my experience, the most challenging part of introducing any new technology, you can build the technology, you can convince the regulators to be cool with it, but marketing that new experience is often the hardest.
Yeah.
let's talk about what strategies and tactics we can deploy to market once we have these casinos live. Mark, do you want to touch on that?
Sure. So I would say, starting from a marketing side, I would mainly focus on communities. Communities nowadays has become, key in every organization to have, because at the end of the day, they're speaking about your product, they're speaking about your brand, and that's what you want at the end of the day by creating a community, letting them contribute to your product or brand, because at the same time it creates a sort of environment that people enjoy, and they enjoy the experience of being in it. Looking at, in fact, the panel before, they were mentioning Fortnite. There's millions of players playing Fortnite. And obviously, why? Because everyone likes the experience. Coming from an esports scene myself, where I did a total years playing World of Warcraft, it's another community-based game, where eventually we are seeing a shift when it comes to Web3, because there are certain elements that people are asking for. And at the end of the day, as mentioned, if you have a good product out there where people are speaking globally about your brand, at the end of the day, it's very limitless when it comes to the marketing side.
Yeah, go for
No, it's also like knowing where you should be, which especially on crypto, NFTs, metaverse, you should be on Twitter, of course. From Twitter, the strategy is that you build a community on Twitter, then you move it to something like Telegram or Discord, yeah? And it also depends on what you want. Do you want to build like your own casino, or you B2B provider or something? There are different strategy. If you're B2B, then maybe you have the business. You need to maintain the business image. Obviously, you run ads, you're more professional, things like these. If you want to be an operator or something, you can try very interesting things like creating personas. You can create personas, like create something interesting that a person that people would like to be, and entertain a certain dream that they have. And people are ridiculously attracted to that. And you can do it. It's very acceptable in this space. You have all the freedom you need, whether you want to do it publicly or even anonymously. It's incredible.
Okay. So you've all been in iGaming for a long time, as I'm sure most of our audience has as well. What trends have you seen in the past that ended up having longevity? And is there anything we can learn from those trends that apply to Web3?
Yeah, I mean, definitely quite a few, right? As in live betting. What else? Megaways, it's a kind of mechanic basically in the slots industry. In general, the way we promote slots, so there's a concept of free spins, right? So you just get like 10 free spins, like voucher basically. So these are a few, I would say, have always kind of, they've lasted quite long. I mean, they're still on and very much actively kind of, talked about.
Anything that was introduced where there was some skepticism about its, sustainability?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that happens with every new technology, right? There's always resistance in the beginning. People just can't figure out what is it that it would help with, right? Like mobile phones, no one really thought that it would become such an integral part of our lives, right? Just like basic technologies, movies, everyone was like, who is going to watch films? I mean, and if you think about it now, it's just unbelievable, right? But I think it's going to be the same with blockchain and Web3. Eventually, yeah, we will get into that space where that's what is going to be the case, because the newer generations will get so used to it, right? I mean, for us, of course, it's new, but the generations, after us, for them, it's going to be normal. It's going to be part of life. So, yeah, it is going to stay, I feel.
So hopefully our audience has a better understanding of Web3, certainly after the last panel and this one. There is a lot of talk about VR and how VR plays in the metaverse. What are your opinions on virtual reality? Is it here? Is it coming?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Oh,
Sure,
sorry.
yeah. So yeah, I would say at the end of the day, as we were saying, like VR has been around for 10 years already. So a lot of questions are being asked why it's being picked up now. From my perspective, the reason why I see that we have more tangible products to connect to, and we have more, I see, user journeys that we can create. Obviously, with VR, AR comes where I see we can create stories, as you was mentioning, for the audience and the customer to experience. Because, you know, at the end of the day, they want to feel and connect with. And I see that VR and AR is bringing certain elements to life where we can experience, even coming from maybe a land-based casino, through AR and VR nowadays, you know, you can play from home, but then you can continue playing from a land-based casino. So there's certain opportunities. We're still in discovery mode, yes. Obviously, regulations are still going to hit, because that's a big question mark, especially marketing in the metaverse, which includes VR and AR. But yes, I see, you know, there isn't any harm in getting into it and just understanding and educating yourself before rushing through. And yeah, at the end of the day, don't expect that much from it, because the return, yes, it's not that big. But then, yes, we are one of the first to be in this industry.
Yeah, I love your example, how it can be applied to extending the brand of a land-based casino, bridging that physical and digital world. You know, that's something that excites me. As a land-based operator, that 2D experience on your phone, while it's great, that's not the experience that we provide our guests in Las Vegas. It just isn't. And theoretically, a social environment in VR could potentially be closer to that experience that we provide. So I think that's super exciting. I am a believer. Yes, we're probably a ways away from that, but it takes innovators that have guts and patience to build that technology now. Otherwise, we'll always be waiting. We have 3 minutes and 7 seconds left before I ask the standard, what does things look like in the next 5 years? Do we have any questions from the audience? Are we allowed to do that? Any questions? Okay, that's fine. I gave you a shot. All right. Very qualified panel. They're very interesting. Okay, so, you know, what do things look like 5 years from now as it applies to Web3 and the gambling industry? Gambling, not gaming, 'cause that's a whole different panel.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. Well, I think it's kind of similar to what the earlier panel were discussing, right? I mean, at this stage, the way the technology is definitely not scalable. It's slow. Like, it has to improve tremendously. Like, you know, which will happen over the next 5 years, and it will definitely become kind of mainstream. And iGaming or gambling is definitely one of the industries where it makes the most sense. So I'm really hoping that, you know, it develops over a period of time so that, you know, we can engage with it more. I mean, at the moment, like, you know, going back to the VR, AR kind of experience, I mean, end of the day, we are in an entertainment industry. Like, you know, that's what we do. We want to make sure that our games, like, you know, are engaging enough, you know, players are getting excited about them. So if that means that comes with the ambience and kind of, you know, that almost real world feeling just sitting at your desk, which is going to become very common, I'm sure, in the future, then yeah, for sure, it is going to stay. So I'm definitely positive.
The way I see it is that there's no correct answer just yet. Yeah, Web3 is a thing we all collectively, because we're here, we collectively agree that we want it. we want to get. Web3 is pretty much a destination, and where it goes in relation to gaming. I'm pretty sure that within the next 5 years, crypto is going to become a mainstream thing in regulated markets as well. Yeah. One idea that I was toying with, it's not new. Like, it was the idea of mini games, right? So because everybody in this room has seen that you have popular video games that have like mini games in there, right? There's obviously some friction, conflict of interest in there. Like, would we like a gaming brand, like an iGaming brand, to be featured in a game or something like that? But I think that in this space, we could make it work. We could have like literally integrate big brands into other popular big gaming brands. And to be very specific, because we can integrate casinos into MMORPGs and things like this. And we can combine the communities. And in the end, it's cross-promotion. One community moves from here to there, and we can see it. Remains to be seen. I am positive that this is probably a better time to approach this, but we'll see what we build on our way there.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. I'm going to butcher this quote, but I did read somewhere that metaverse is defined when your digital identity is more important than your physical identity. And if you ask my kids, we're all living in the metaverse today. So welcome to the metaverse. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.